Let's do the long tail cast on the Kiss Dragon loom so you can see it with great clarity. We will cast on using the pegs between the two green markers and including the marked pegs. Measure a distance of yarn against the loom that is at least 3 times the length that you plan to cast on. And to be on the safe side, I always add a little. Now this is the main yarn. We're going to knot a loop into it at the point that I have determined and separate it into 2 ends. In my left hand, running across it now, is the main yarn supply. From the knot to the end, the short end, this is called the tail. That's the area that I just measured off. I've turned the loom so the pegs are away from me. I am over here. These are the pegs. These are the pins. These are the pegs that we're going to cast on. The yarn supply, the main supply, is there. Here's the knotted loop, which we will paste on the peg that we want to begin with. And in my right hand, running through my fingers now, is the tail. Use that tail to make the cursive letter E around the next peg over. Behind the peg, this is the main yarn supply. Bring it towards yourself, wrapping behind the pin, then away from yourself around the outside of the peg. Bottom loop over top loop. That bottom loop, which is the tail loop, that may need to be tightened up manually. Now keep everything straight so that you know what's what. Bring the tail again towards yourself around the pin, cursive letter E around the peg. Don't let the yarns get tangled up. I really should have lifted this to the outside. Now towards you, around the interior peg, away from you, interior pin, around the exterior peg, bottom loop over top loop. Yarn tail is in my left hand, tighten it up. Now I'm going to do this one correctly to keep the yarns from entangling. The main yarn supply is now to the outside. Yarn tail towards me, behind the pin, away from me, making the cursive letter E. Main yarn supply towards me, behind the pin, away from me, around the peg, bottom loop over top loop. Now you can start to refine things. My left hand held onto both of the yarns while the right hand lifted over, which means I don't have nearly as much tightening to do because it didn't try to loosen up. Again, main yarn to the outside, yarn tail towards me, around the pin towards me, cursive letter E around the peg, working yarn around the pin, around the peg. Notice that the working yarn does not ever make an E-wrap. That's something exclusive to the tail. Tighten up, set up for the next stitch. Towards me, away, letter E. Towards me, away, bottom over top. Tighten up. We have one more stitch to go. Sort our yarns out again. Behind the pin, E-wrap the peg. Behind the pin, normally wrap the peg for a stockinette stitch. And we're good to go. The row is finished. These are normal stitches, so the first row after this kind of cast on is very simple. Just wrap in front of the peg, behind the pin, front, back, front. back, front, back, front, back, front, back, and we commence the normal stockinette, bottom loop over top loop. And any time now that you are finding these markers to get in your way, you can remove them. I would not normally have used markers at all. That was to clearly delineate the space for your understanding and to help me keep it in the video frame. Bottom loop over top loop, bottom loop over top loop, bottom loop over top loop. And every row thereafter is just like the one we just now completed, unless, of course, you add purl stitches or fancy stitches of any kind.